I pulled up to my house after a 2-week business trip, still tired from the long drive, and I froze. My jaw dropped. My driveway was gone. Where there used to be a clean, smooth concrete path leading up to my garage, there was now a wide mess of fresh dirt, broken concrete chunks, twisted rebar, and deep bulldozer tracks everywhere. It looked like a war zone. Pieces of my once beautiful driveway were scattered across my front lawn like a tornado had passed through. For a second, I thought I had the wrong house. But nope, there was my mailbox with my name, Mr. Michael Harris, right there. There was my front porch swing. My red shutters. This was MY Home. And someone had destroyed my driveway while I was away. I scrambled out of the car, heart racing, not even shutting the door behind me. My boots sank into the soft dirt where my concrete used to be. Then I saw it. Right at the edge of the destruction, there was a cheap little plastic sign hammered into the ground. It read, "Community Property, Maintained by HOA. Thank you for your cooperation." My stomach dropped. No way. No way. Before I could even process it all, I heard high heels clacking on the sidewalk behind me. I turned, and there she was, Karen, the queen of the Homeowners Association, with her bleach blonde bob, designer sunglasses perched on her head, and her clipboard in hand like a weapon. She had a smug smile on her face, like she was proud of the disaster. "Welcome home, Mr. Harris," she said, voice syrupy sweet. "Hope you like the improvements. Your old driveway was violating HOA guidelines. And besides," she waved her hand at the mess like she was showing off a piece of modern art, "this land is community-owned now." I stared at her, stunned. Community-owned? What was she even talking about? This was my property. It was clearly marked on the plat map when I bought the house 2 years ago. No one had ever said anything about my driveway being shared. Before I could even say a word, Karen spun around and strutted away, humming like she hadn't just demolished tens of thousands of dollars of my property. That's when the anger hit me like a freight train. I wasn't about to let this slide. Cliffhanger. I grabbed my phone and called someone I never thought I'd need, my attorney cousin Caleb. What he told me next would change everything. My hands were shaking as I punched in Caleb's number. The phone barely rang once before he picked up. "Mike? Everything okay?" Caleb's voice was calm, steady, exactly what I needed at that moment. "Caleb, someone bulldozed my driveway," I said, the words tumbling out. While I was gone, "The HOA says it's community-owned now." I heard him suck in a sharp breath. "Stay right where you are," he said immediately. "Don't touch anything. I'm coming over." 15 minutes later, Caleb's dark pickup truck rumbled up what was left of my driveway. He stepped out, tall and serious in jeans, boots, and a gray hoodie. He looked around at the wreckage, whistling low. "This is bad," he said. "No kidding," I muttered, kicking a chunk of broken concrete aside. Caleb pulled out his own phone and started snapping pictures from every angle, close-ups, wide shots, even down low to show the bulldozer tracks. Then he turned to me. "Mike, you're going to have to be smart about this," he said. "Karen and the HOA can't just take private property. But if you don't act fast, they'll bury you in paperwork and fake claims. We need proof, and we need it now." I nodded, my chest tightening. "I still have my property plat map inside," I said. "It shows my driveway is 100% on my land." "Good," Caleb said. "We'll need that." We rushed inside. As I was digging through my office drawer for the documents, there was a sharp knock on the door. "Open up," a loud voice barked. It was deep, aggressive. Caleb moved to the window and peeked out. Then he cursed under his breath. "It's the HOA security team," he said grimly. "They brought backup." I hurried to the window too, and my heart skipped a beat. 3 men in matching security uniforms stood on my front porch, arms crossed, dark sunglasses hiding their eyes. Behind them was a white truck with flashing yellow lights and the HOA logo on the side. "They can't force their way in, right?" I asked nervously. "Not without a police officer," Caleb said. "And unless you invite them inside, they're trespassing." I took a deep breath, walked to the door, and cracked it open just an inch. "Can I help you?" I asked as calmly as I could. One of the guards, a big guy with a buzz cut, shoved a paper through the crack. "You've been served," he said. Violation notice. Noncompliance with HOA beautification standards. I took the paper, but didn't say anything. Before I could even ask questions, the men turned and marched back to their truck. Caleb grabbed the paper from my hand, eyes scanning it quickly. "This is garbage," he said. "They're trying to make it seem like you're the one who broke the rules, so it justifies what they did." I felt sick to my stomach. But what can we do? Caleb's eyes gleamed. "Oh, we're gonna fight. Hard." He pulled out his phone again, dialing someone. "Who are you calling?" I asked. "My friend Jenna," he said. "She's a real estate lawyer who's taken down crooked HOAs before. And trust me, Mike, you're gonna need her." I sat down hard on the couch, feeling like the room was spinning. I had bought this house for peace and quiet. A place to work from home, grill in the backyard, raise a family someday. Now it felt like I was under attack. As I sat there trying to process everything, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from an unknown number. "You might want to think twice before fighting us. We have ways of making you regret it." My blood went cold. I showed it to Caleb, and he stared at it for a long moment. "Looks like Karen's playing dirty," he said. "But guess what? So can we." Cliffhanger. That night Caleb and I made a plan, but we didn't know Karen was already 2 steps ahead, and what she did next would push this war over the edge. That night, Caleb and I stayed up late, sitting around my kitchen table with a pile of documents, my property plat map, and a laptop open between us. We made a solid plan. First thing in the morning, we'd file an official complaint against the HOA with the city council. We'd also report the bulldozing to the police as property destruction. Caleb said we needed to hit them fast and hard before Karen could twist the story more. I felt a little better by the time we finalized everything. It felt good to have a real plan. Finally, it seemed like I had some control back. But while Caleb and I were plotting our next moves, Karen was already plotting hers. Around midnight, as Caleb packed up to leave, I heard the rumble of engines outside. Lots of engines. We both rushed to the window, and what we saw made my heart lurch. 3 massive dump trucks were pulling up in front of my house. One after another after another. Their beds were tilted high, and they were loaded with gravel. Before I could even think, the truck started backing up onto my destroyed driveway area. Workers in neon vests and hard hats jumped out, guiding them. And then the trucks started dumping. Tons and tons of sharp, dirty gravel crashed down onto my front yard and what was left of my driveway, creating an ugly, uneven, rocky mess. It was so loud it shook the windows. I threw open the front door and stormed outside, barefoot, still in my sweatpants. Hey, what are you doing?" I shouted over the noise. One of the workers shrugged. "HOA orders," he yelled back. "Paving a new community path." I was stunned. This wasn't just wrecking my driveway. They were trying to make it into some kind of public walkway. Caleb grabbed my arm. "Don't interfere now," he said under his breath. "Let them finish. This is more evidence. We'll nail them to the wall with this." I gritted my teeth so hard it hurt. I wanted to scream, to shove the workers off my lawn. But I knew Caleb was right. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording everything. Every truck, every shovel of gravel, every smirking worker. That's when I spotted her. Karen. She was standing across the street on the sidewalk, arms crossed, smiling like the cat who ate the canary. She wore a silk bathrobe and furry slippers, sipping from a giant mug that said, "Queen Bee." When she saw me recording, she raised her mug in a mocking little toast. I had never hated someone so much in my life. Finally, after almost an hour, the trucks left. My once beautiful front yard and driveway were now an uneven gravel pit. I stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched. Caleb put a hand on my shoulder. "This is good," he said. "She just made a huge mistake." "How?" I asked, still furious. "Gravel paths have to meet strict city codes," he said. "Permits, drainage, property lines. She just illegally modified private land without consent." I let out a shaky breath. Maybe there was hope after all. But just as I was starting to calm down, a black SUV with tinted windows rolled up in front of my house. It stopped, engine idling. Caleb and I froze. Then the back window rolled down slowly. Inside, a man in a suit and dark sunglasses stared at us coldly. He held up a manila envelope and let it drop out the window onto my curb. Without a word, the SUV sped off into the night. I rushed over and picked it up. Inside was a thick stack of papers. At the top, in big bold letters, it said, "Notice of intent to seize property for community improvement. HOA action approved." I felt like the ground fell out from under me. They were trying to take my house. Cliffhanger. Caleb grabbed the papers, scanning them, and his face went pale. "Mike," he said, voice deadly serious. "They're not just bluffing. They filed a fake deed transfer. They're trying to steal your entire property." Caleb's hands shook slightly as he flipped through the papers. "This isn't just scare tactics, Mike," he said, his voice low and grim. "They filed a document at the county office claiming the HOA owns your land now. If we don't fight this immediately, you could lose everything." I stared at him, feeling like I was drowning. "My house? My land? They can't just take it." "They can try," Caleb said. "And if the paperwork looks official enough, it'll tie you up in court for months, maybe even years." I sank down onto the porch step, the thick envelope still clutched in my hands. "This was supposed to be my safe place," I whispered. "I saved for 10 years to buy this house. It's the first thing that's ever been mine." Caleb crouched next to me. "We're not letting them win," he said firmly. "But we have to be smart, fast, aggressive." "What do we do?" I asked, feeling totally helpless. "Tomorrow morning, we go to the county clerk's office," Caleb said. "We pull all the property records, every filing they submitted. If there's forgery, if they tampered with anything, we'll catch them." I nodded, gripping the envelope tighter. "And Mike," Caleb added, locking eyes with me, "you need to be ready. They're not going to play fair." He wasn't kidding. Because less than an hour later, as I was trying to get a few hours of restless sleep, I woke up to the sound of loud pounding. Bam, bam, bam. Someone was banging on my front door like they were trying to break it down. I stumbled out of bed, heart racing, and peeked through the peephole. It was 2 police officers. Real ones this time, not HOA security. Caleb, who had crashed on my couch, was already awake and pulling on his boots. I opened the door carefully. "Mr. Harris?" the taller officer asked. "Yes." "We received a complaint from the HOA about unauthorized occupancy of community property," he said flatly. "They're claiming you're trespassing." I blinked, stunned. "This is my house." I protested. The officer looked uncomfortable. "We don't have the authority to make any rulings tonight," he said. "But until this is sorted out, the HOA is requesting that you vacate the premises." "That's illegal," Caleb said sharply, stepping forward. "They can't evict a legal homeowner without a court order." The officers exchanged glances. "Be that as it may," the taller one said, "we're asking for cooperation to avoid escalation." I looked past them, and there, across the street, was Karen, standing on the sidewalk in her bathrobe again, sipping from her Queen Bee mug, smiling. I felt rage boil inside me. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not leaving my house." The officers sighed, but nodded. "All right, we'll leave it at that for now. But be aware, this situation is escalating fast." They walked back to their cruiser, leaving Caleb and me standing in the doorway under the pale porch light. I turned to Caleb. "She's not going to stop, is she?" He shook his head. "No, she's just getting started." I barely slept that night. First thing the next morning, we drove to the county clerk's office downtown. It was an old building with marble floors, heavy oak doors, and a musty smell like history clinging to the air. We requested my property file, and when the clerk brought it out, Caleb flipped through it carefully. "There," he said, jabbing a finger at a page. My stomach turned. A new document had been filed just 3 days ago, a document transferring ownership of my property from Michael Harris to the Whispering Pines HOA. Except, the signature wasn't mine. It was a sloppy scrawl that didn't even come close to my real handwriting. "They forged it," Caleb said grimly. He whipped out his phone and started taking pictures of everything. As we gathered the evidence, Caleb leaned closer. "And look who notarized it," he muttered. I leaned over and saw the name, Sharon Evans. "Who's that?" I asked. Caleb's eyes darkened. Karen's best friend. She's on the HOA board. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. This is fraud, Caleb said. Federal offense. If we move fast, we can have them arrested. We raced out of the building, adrenaline pumping. But when we got back to my neighborhood, something was horribly wrong. Orange construction barriers had been set up across my driveway. Heavy equipment sat on my front lawn, bulldozers, cement mixers, excavators. And a big white sign had been planted in the ground. Coming soon. Whispering Pines Community Park, sponsored by HOA. My heart dropped. Workers were already starting to rip up my front yard. And standing right in the middle of the chaos, clipboard in hand, sunglasses flashing in the sun, was Karen. She saw me pull up and waved. Like I was just another piece of trash she was about to bulldoze away. Caleb jumped out of the truck, yelling. But just then, Karen raised a hand, and the bulldozer started moving straight toward my front porch, with my dog trapped inside the house. I barely had time to think. The bulldozer's engine roared as it started rolling across my gravel-piled yard, straight toward my house. And my dog, Max, was still inside. Stop. I screamed, leaping out of the truck. Caleb was already sprinting for the house, waving his arms frantically. The bulldozer driver hesitated for just a second, looking back at Karen. Karen gave a little nod. He kept going. The machine rumbled forward, the huge metal blade lowering closer to the ground. Panic surged through me like a lightning strike. I didn't care about the law or paperwork or Caleb's warnings anymore. I sprinted across the torn-up yard, dodging around the construction barriers, my boots slipping in the loose gravel. Max, come. I yelled at the top of my lungs. Through the front window, I saw Max, my golden retriever, barking like crazy, jumping at the door. But the noise outside must have scared him too much. He wasn't moving. The bulldozer was less than 20 feet from my porch now. The ground shook with every heavy thud of its tracks. Without thinking, I threw myself onto the porch, yanked open the front door, and whistled sharply. Max, come, boy. Finally, Max bolted toward me, just as the bulldozer's blade slammed into the bottom steps of my porch, splintering them into pieces. I scooped Max into my arms and dove off the side of the porch, rolling into the dirt just in time. The bulldozer driver slammed on the brakes, looking shocked. Caleb ran up, grabbing my arm and dragging me farther away. Are you insane? He shouted at the driver. The workers started shouting too. Some of them seemed genuinely horrified. Others just looked confused. Karen, however, stood there calm as ever, scribbling something onto her clipboard. I staggered to my feet, clutching Max, who whined and buried his head into my chest. You could have killed my dog. I roared at Karen. Karen didn't even blink. You're trespassing on community land, she said sweetly. The park construction must proceed. My hands were shaking with rage. I wanted to scream, to tear the clipboard out of her hand and throw it into the bulldozer's engine. Instead, Caleb leaned down and whispered urgently in my ear. Mike, cameras. Film everything. Don't touch her. Don't touch anything. Let's trap her with evidence. With shaking fingers, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Karen smirked and turned toward the workers. Continue with demolition, she ordered. 2 more bulldozers started their engines. Caleb, I said in a low, terrified voice. They're going to level the whole house. I know, he said grimly. We have to stop them legally. Suddenly, Caleb's phone rang. He answered it immediately. Jenna, he barked into the phone. Where are you? I'm pulling up now, she said. Sure enough, a black SUV screeched to a halt at the curb. A tall woman in a navy blue pantsuit jumped out, briefcase in hand, fury flashing in her eyes. She stormed across the yard toward us, heels sinking slightly into the dirt. Everybody stop. Jenna bellowed, her voice cutting through the chaos like a whip. The bulldozer drivers paused, confused. Jenna marched right up to Karen and slapped a thick folder into her chest. This is a cease and desist order, Jenna snapped. Filed this morning. You are committing trespass, property destruction, and fraud. If you continue for even one more second, I will personally have you arrested. Karen blinked, caught off guard for the first time. Some of the workers started stepping back from their equipment, exchanging nervous looks. Jenna turned to the workers and shouted, "You touch one more thing, and you will be personally liable too." The drivers immediately killed their engines. Silence fell over the yard, except for Max's soft whining against my chest. Karen's face twisted in rage. "You have no idea who you're messing with," she hissed at Jenna. Jenna just smiled coldly. "Neither do you." Before I could even catch my breath, a luxury car rolled up, and a new nightmare began. The door of the black luxury car opened, and a man in an expensive suit with slicked back hair stepped out. He strolled toward Karen and handed her a thick envelope. Karen grinned like she had just won a game show. Then she turned toward me, eyes flashing with triumph. "Meet Mr. Wallace," she said sweetly. "He's the HOA's attorney. And guess what, Michael?" She pulled a paper out of the envelope and waved it like a trophy. "We just filed an emergency lawsuit against you. We're demanding an immediate court hearing to seize your property by eminent domain." Caleb and Jenna grabbed the papers, scanning them, and their faces went pale. Jenna whispered, "Mike, they found a loophole. And if they win tomorrow, you'll be homeless by nightfall." I felt like the ground disappeared under my feet. "Tomorrow," I choked out. "How is that even possible?" Jenna's eyes were locked on the paperwork, her brows furrowed deeply. "They used an emergency hearing loophole," she said tightly, "claiming public interest, claiming the park is vital to community safety and well-being." She looked up at me, her face grim. "If the judge sides with them tomorrow, Mike, you could lose the house before you even get a fair trial." I stared at her, my heart pounding like a drum inside my chest. "They can't do this," I whispered. "They can't just steal my life." Karen, standing smugly a few feet away, sipped from her queen bee mug again and smiled like the devil. "I suggest you start packing," she said sweetly. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. Caleb stepped in between us, his voice low and dangerous. "Careful, Karen. You're leaving a trail of evidence a mile wide." Karen just laughed. Actually, I laughed. "This neighborhood belongs to us now," she said, flipping her hair. Jenna pulled me aside. "We have to move fast," she said urgently. "I need you to find everything you have that proves ownership, photos, receipts, mortgage documents, anything that shows your investment in the property. We'll build an emergency counter case tonight." "Okay," I said, still feeling like I was in a nightmare. "But what about the forgery?" "We'll bring that too," Jenna said. "It's risky. Judges usually don't like messy cases at emergency hearings, but if we show even a hint of fraud, it could buy us time." Caleb clapped me on the back. "You're not alone, Mike. We're fighting this all the way." We worked all through the night, digging through file cabinets, laptops, even old photo albums. I found the deed. I found the mortgage papers. I found photos of me pouring the first concrete on the driveway when I first bought the house. Every scrap of proof we packed into Jenna's briefcase. Around 5 a.m., Jenna took a deep breath. "This is it," she said. "Time to go." The courthouse loomed ahead like a giant gray monster as we pulled into the parking lot. Inside it was cold and echoey, with marble floors and towering ceilings. Karen was already there, sitting with her smug lawyer, Mr. Wallace, flipping through her own binder of papers like she was about to win a game show. She saw me walk in and gave me a wink. I almost threw up. We took our seats in the courtroom. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and silver hair, entered. "All rise," the bailiff barked. We all stood. Court was called into session. Wallace stood first, all slick and confident. He spun a tale about community safety, about children needing parks, about how selfish property owners like me were holding back progress. He showed diagrams, fake surveys, forged signatures from neighbors claiming they wanted the park. I sat there seething. Finally, Jenna stood. She didn't bother with fancy words. She slammed the property deed onto the evidence table. She played a video of Karen ordering the bulldozer to move toward my house. She showed side-by-side comparisons of my real signature and the fake one on the deed transfer. The judge listened carefully, her face impossible to read. After an hour of back and forth, the judge finally leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers under her chin. "This is highly irregular," she said slowly. The allegations of fraud are serious. Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Mr. Wallace leaned over and whispered something in her ear. The judge continued. But given the pressing claim of community need, she said, and the technical loophole filed by the HOA, I held my breath so hard it hurt. This court will. Suddenly, the courtroom doors burst open. Everyone turned. An older man in a military uniform strode into the room, medals gleaming on his chest. He walked straight to the judge and handed her a folder. The judge opened it, skimmed the first page, and her face changed instantly. She looked up, sharp and cold. This, she said loudly, changes everything. Karen shot up from her seat. What? What is that? The judge ignored her. She banged her gavel once. New evidence has been submitted proving fraudulent practices by the Whispering Pines HOA. Effective immediately, an injunction is placed against the HOA. All activities on Mr. Harris's property must cease at once. Karen screamed. Actually screamed. This isn't fair. You can't do this to me. Security moved toward her, but she jerked away, knocking over a chair. Meanwhile, I just stood there, stunned. Caleb clapped me on the back, laughing. We're not just winning, Mike, he whispered. We're going to take her entire operation down. The judge continued reading the papers from the mystery military man. And when she spoke next, her voice was thunderous. And further, pending criminal investigation into forgery, racketeering, and fraud is officially opened against Karen Monroe and members of the Whispering Pines HOA board. Karen tried to bolt from the courtroom, but as she reached the door, a U.S. Marshal stepped in front of her and snapped handcuffs around her wrists. Karen froze, her hands halfway in the air. The U.S. Marshal moved fast, clicking the cold silver handcuffs around her wrists before she could even scream again. But oh, she tried. You can't arrest me, she shrieked. I'm the HOA president. I have rights. The whole courtroom stared as she kicked and fought like a wildcat. But the marshal didn't even flinch. You're under investigation for multiple felony counts, he said calmly. Forgery, fraud, racketeering. You have the right to remain silent. Karen didn't stay silent, though. She kept screaming about conspiracies, about how she would sue everybody, about how this was a setup. It was honestly pathetic. Meanwhile, Mr. Wallace just quietly gathered his papers, trying to slip out of the courtroom unnoticed. He didn't get far. 2 other marshals stopped him at the door. We need to ask you a few questions, sir, one said firmly. The judge banged her gavel. This hearing is adjourned. Mr. Harris retains full ownership of his property. Any further interference will be met with legal penalties. I barely heard her over the roaring in my ears. I had won. I had actually won. The storm of emotions inside me, fear, rage, exhaustion, broke all at once. Caleb grabbed me in a bear hug, nearly lifting me off the ground. You did it, Mike, he shouted. You freaking did it. Jenna just grinned and gave me a small, professional nod. You're free, she said simply. I felt like I could finally breathe again. As Karen was dragged kicking and screaming out of the courtroom, I caught one last look at her face. It was a twisted mask of fury and disbelief. For a woman who thought she owned the world, losing must have tasted like poison. We stepped outside into the bright morning sun. News cameras were already there, reporters shouting questions. Mr. Harris, how does it feel to beat the HOA? Is it true they tried to steal your home? Are you planning to sue them? I shielded my face with my hand, overwhelmed. Come on, Caleb said, steering me toward the parking lot. Let's get out of here before this turns into a circus. We climbed into his truck and peeled away. The ride home was quiet. When we pulled into my driveway, I saw the full extent of the damage. The gravel was still there. The porch steps were still shattered. The yard was still torn to pieces. It looked like a battleground. Still a lot of work to do, Caleb said softly. Yeah, I muttered. But for the first time in weeks, I felt hope. I wasn't going to lose my home. I wasn't going to be bullied into giving up everything I had worked for. Max barked happily, wagging his tail, and raced up the broken steps into the house. Home sweet home. I was just about to follow him inside when a shiny black SUV rolled up to the curb. My stomach twisted. Another lawyer? Another HOA weasel? The door opened, and a tall man in a dark suit stepped out. He wasn't wearing sunglasses like all the others. He had piercing gray eyes and an air of authority. He walked up to me, hand extended. "Mr. Harris," he said. "My name is Agent Reynolds, Department of Justice." I blinked, stunned, and shook his hand automatically. What's going on?" I asked, heart hammering all over again. He gave me a small smile. "We've been investigating the Whispering Pines HOA for a long time," he said. "Karen Monroe wasn't just harassing homeowners. She was part of a much bigger operation." I swallowed hard. "What kind of operation?" Agent Reynolds glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Then he leaned in close and said something that made my blood run cold. Karen wasn't working alone. She had partners across the county. And you, Mr. Harris, you just became the star witness in one of the biggest property fraud cases this state has ever seen. Before I could even respond, Agent Reynolds added, "But be careful. Now that you've exposed them, you're officially a target."